Maya thought she heard something beneath her apartment that night. At first, she ignored it. Then she heard it again. One strange sound, one locked door, and one decision that would change everything. She had no idea she was about to find something she was never meant to see. There are moments in life that arrive without warning. Moments that begin as ordinary seconds and then quietly separate your life into two versions, the life before and the life after. Most people never realize when they are standing at that line. Most people cross it without even noticing. Maya was 28 years old, living alone, working a regular office job, paying bills, answering emails, and doing the same things millions of people do every day. Nothing about her life looked unusual. Nothing about her apartment looked unusual either. It was one of those older buildings with faded walls and long, narrow hallways where footsteps seemed to echo a little longer than they should. The kind of place where neighbors nodded politely in elevators without knowing each other's last names. The kind of place where people moved in and out quietly, and life simply continued. But that night felt different. It started with a sound beneath the floor. A scraping noise. Slow. Metallic. Brief enough to make her wonder whether she had imagined it. She looked around her apartment. Silence. Everything stood exactly where it had always been. Her television remained off. The refrigerator hummed softly from the kitchen. Outside, distant city traffic drifted through the windows. Maya stood still for a few seconds and then laughed at herself. She blamed exhaustion. Long workdays have a strange way of making ordinary things feel unsettling. She brushed it off and went to sleep. Then the sound returned the following night. This time it lasted longer. There was movement beneath her. Not footsteps. Not pipes. Movement. And that was the moment curiosity entered the room. Curiosity has caused people to cross oceans. Curiosity has led explorers toward mountains, forests, abandoned towns, and locked doors. Curiosity has also placed people in situations they spent years wishing they could forget. Maya tried explaining it away. Older buildings settle. Metal shifts. Wood expands. There had to be a reason. Yet over the next several days, she began noticing things that felt difficult to explain. Around midnight, hallway lights would activate outside her apartment, even when nobody seemed present. The elevator occasionally stopped at lower floors without anyone stepping out. Several times, she noticed a faint chemical smell drifting through the air before disappearing minutes later. Once, while collecting mail, she mentioned hearing strange sounds to an elderly neighbor. The reaction surprised her. The man's expression changed immediately. His smile disappeared. He stared at her for a moment. Then he simply walked away. No explanation. No words. Nothing. People can hide fear in many ways, but silence usually tells its own story. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Days passed, and Maya started paying attention to details she had ignored before. Near the parking area sat a door leading toward the building basement. She had seen it hundreds of times. Everyone had. Yet nobody seemed to use it. No tenants entered. No maintenance workers walked through it. No deliveries arrived there. The handle looked untouched. The lock looked old. It simply existed like part of the background. Until one evening, when Maya saw something she knew she had never seen before. The door opened. Two men emerged carrying sealed storage containers. No uniforms. No conversation. No eye contact. Just movement. She watched them disappear toward an elevator before the doors closed. Maya stood there frozen. Because now the sounds had a place. And places create questions. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying every strange moment from the past week inside her mind. The sounds. The neighbor's reaction. The door. The men. The containers. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe she was overthinking everything. But people say that instinct exists for a reason. Sometimes your mind notices danger before you understand why. Saturday finally arrived and Maya made a decision that felt small at the time. She decided she wanted answers. She waited until after midnight. Hallways became quiet. Apartment lights disappeared one by one. The building slowly settled into sleep. Maya grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. She walked toward the basement entrance. Each step felt heavier than the previous one. Her heart started beating faster. Then something happened that immediately made her stop. The door was already open. Just slightly. Only a few inches. Enough to reveal darkness waiting beyond it. Enough to make someone turn around. Enough to make someone leave. Maya looked behind her. Nothing. Silence. No movement. No voices. Then she reached forward and pushed the door. And at that moment, she crossed the line between before and after. 3 seconds changed everything. Maya froze beside her front door because a strange sound traveled through the walls. Not footsteps. Not music. Something else. A metallic scraping noise dragged across the floor beneath her apartment. Curiosity became the first mistake. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have looked at the clock, blamed old pipes, blamed weather, blamed exhaustion after a long week, and moved on with their lives. Maya tried doing exactly that. She stood near the front door and waited. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds passed. 15 seconds passed. Silence returned, and the apartment suddenly felt normal again. Outside her windows, heavy rain tapped against the glass, while distant traffic rolled across wet streets below. Hallway lights outside flickered briefly beneath the narrow gap under her door, and then settled again. Everything looked ordinary. Everything looked exactly the way it had looked every night before. Yet there was one problem. Ordinary sounds never leave questions behind. This one did. Maya slowly stepped away from the door and looked toward the floor beneath her feet. She lived on the first residential level of the building, which meant there was only one thing beneath her apartment. Storage units and the old lower section of the building that tenants rarely talked about. She remembered seeing the entrance before. The heavy metal door beside the parking area. Locked every day. Locked every night. Locked every single time she had walked past it. She stared at the floor. Nothing. Then the scraping returned. Longer this time. Slow. Metal against concrete. A dragging movement. Maya felt her chest tighten. Because sounds carry strange power. Human beings can recognize danger long before understanding it. Somewhere deep inside us there is something ancient that notices when things feel wrong. Maya could feel it now. That small, uncomfortable feeling that quietly tells you something deserves attention. The noise suddenly stopped. Complete silence followed. Then another sound replaced it. A single thud. Maya immediately looked toward the hallway. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No voices. No elevator doors opening. Silence again. She reached for her phone and looked at the time. 1:13 a.m. She shook her head and laughed quietly at herself. Maybe someone downstairs had dropped something. Maybe maintenance workers were moving equipment. Maybe there was an explanation waiting somewhere that would make this feel ridiculous tomorrow morning. She walked toward her bedroom, then stopped, because another thought entered her mind. If someone was working downstairs at 1 in the morning, why had she never seen anyone enter that lower level before? Questions have strange timing. They usually arrive when sleep disappears. Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling while rain continued tapping outside. Minutes passed. Then an hour passed. Every tiny sound inside the apartment suddenly felt louder than before. The refrigerator clicked. Water moved through pipes. Wind brushed against windows. Then she heard it again. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. This time there was no confusion. No doubt. No imagination. Something was moving beneath her apartment. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Maya suddenly felt like somebody, or something, had become aware that she was listening. Morning arrived, but Maya barely slept. She had spent most of the night staring at her ceiling, replaying that scraping noise inside her mind over and over again. Eventually sunlight pushed through her curtains, and the city outside returned to life as if nothing unusual had happened. Cars moved through intersections. Coffee shops opened their doors. People hurried across sidewalks carrying backpacks and paper cups while checking their phones every few seconds. Another ordinary day had started. Another routine morning had begun. Maya lived a simple life. Work, home, sleep, repeat. There was comfort in predictability. Her weekdays usually followed the same path. Wake up early. Grab coffee from the small cafe 2 blocks away. Head toward work. Return home in the evening. Heat dinner. Watch television for a while. Sleep. Repeat everything again the next day. Nothing dramatic happened around her neighborhood. Residents exchanged small greetings in passing. Delivery drivers came and left throughout the day. Weekends felt identical to every other weekend before them. The building itself felt invisible. Nobody paid much attention to it because there was never any reason to. But after hearing those sounds beneath her apartment, Maya began noticing details that had somehow escaped her attention before. The locked entrance beside the parking area was one of them. She had walked past it countless times. Hundreds maybe. Yet suddenly she found herself staring at it longer than usual. It looked ordinary enough. Thick metal construction. Dark, paint beginning to fade around the edges. A small keypad beside the frame. Nothing remarkable about it at all. But there was something strange about familiarity. People often stop seeing things they pass every day. Maya had stopped seeing it too. Until now. Because now she realized something. That door remained closed every hour of every day. Morning. Afternoon. Night. Always closed. Always locked. No residents entered. No workers came out. Nobody ever spoke about it. She stood near the parking lot that morning holding coffee in her hands while staring toward it. Then a voice interrupted her thoughts. Morning. Maya turned and saw one of her neighbors walking toward his car. She smiled politely and greeted him back before glancing once more toward the entrance. Do you know what's down there? She asked casually. The neighbor looked toward the door. For a second his expression changed. Only for a second. Then he shrugged. Storage maybe. Maybe. Such a small word. People use it when they don't know something. People also use it when they don't want to explain something. Maya watched him drive away. Then she looked back at the entrance. Questions were beginning to collect. And questions usually want answers. Tuesday brought another strange moment. Around midnight Maya sat quietly in her apartment scrolling through her phone while television light flickered softly across the room. She wasn't thinking about the lower level anymore. At least that was what she kept telling herself. Then movement caught her attention. She looked toward the front door. A shadow moved beneath it. Slowly. One shape. Then another. Maya frowned. Footsteps never followed. Voices never followed. Just shadows crossing from one side to another. She stood up and walked closer. Nothing. She opened the door. The hallway was empty. Completely empty. Wednesday arrived. Sleep became difficult again. Around midnight, she heard something else. Whispers. Very soft. Almost impossible to understand. At first Maya thought a television somewhere nearby had been left running. Maybe neighbors were talking through thin apartment walls. But these voices felt different. Short. Quiet. Unclear. Words she couldn't understand. Then silence. Thursday brought something new. As Maya stepped into the hallway after returning home from work, a strange smell drifted through the air. Sharp. Chemical. Unfamiliar. She stopped walking. For several seconds, she simply stood there trying to recognize it. Cleaning products maybe. Fresh paint. Something industrial. Then it disappeared. Hours later Maya found herself standing near her window, looking toward the parking area below. And that was when she saw them. Two men. Dark clothing. No uniforms. No conversation. They pushed a cart carrying sealed containers toward the locked lower entrance. Maya immediately sat forward. Because this was different. Very different. The door opened. Just enough. The men disappeared inside. Then the door closed again. Questions gathered inside Maya's mind. And each answer she imagined somehow felt worse than the one before. Tuesday brought another odd moment. Maya had tried convincing herself that she was paying too much attention to things most people would ignore. She wanted to believe stress was creating connections between events that had nothing to do with one another. Human beings do that sometimes. Once a thought enters your mind, your brain begins collecting evidence for it everywhere you look. Maya understood that. She knew people could scare themselves if they focused too much on small details. Yet understanding something and believing it are two very different things. That night, she sat on her couch with television light moving softly across the room while rain clouds covered the city outside. Her eyes moved toward the clock. 11:58 p.m. Midnight was 2 minutes away. She laughed quietly at herself. Because for some reason she was waiting. Waiting for something she couldn't even explain. Then she saw movement. At first she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. She leaned forward. Underneath her front door, a faint shadow slowly crossed from left to right. Maya stared. Then another shape followed. Then another. 3 separate movements. Slow. Careful. Like people walking past quietly. Her eyebrows narrowed. No footsteps followed. That made no sense. Hallway floors inside the building always made sounds. Shoes clicked. Doors opened. Elevator motors hummed. Somebody moving outside should have created noise. Nothing happened. Absolute silence. Maya stood up carefully and walked toward the entrance. For a second she hesitated. Then she opened the door. Empty hallway. No neighbors. No movement. No sound. The elevator doors remained closed at the opposite end. Hallway lights sat perfectly still above her. Maya looked both directions. Nobody. She slowly closed the door again. Then stood there staring. Because she knew exactly what she had seen. Wednesday arrived and Maya spent most of the day trying not to think about it. Work kept her distracted for several hours. Emails arrived. Meetings came and went. People laughed around her. Life continued moving exactly as normal. Yet, by evening her thoughts had returned to the apartment. Returned to the lower level. Returned to the shadows. Around midnight, she heard something again. At first she thought the television in another apartment had been left on. Then she lowered the volume. And listened. Voices. Very soft. Whispers. Maya sat upright immediately. The words sounded distant. Too distant to understand. One voice. Then another. Then several more. Quiet sounds moving through walls. She strained to hear anything clearly. Nothing. Only fragments. Tiny pieces of conversations disappearing before they could become words. Then complete silence. Maya looked around her apartment. A strange feeling settled inside her chest. Because voices meant people. And people meant somebody was down there. Thursday brought something entirely different. The moment Maya stepped into her hallway after work, she stopped moving. Something smelled wrong. Sharp. Strong. Chemical. She looked around instinctively. The scent floated through the air briefly before fading. Cleaning supplies maybe. Paint perhaps. Yet something about it felt unusual. The smell disappeared within seconds. But Maya stayed there looking toward the hallway. Looking toward the elevator. Looking toward the direction leading downstairs. Later that night she stood beside her window, holding a cup of coffee, when movement below caught her attention. 2 men walked across the parking area. Dark jackets. Dark caps. No uniforms. No conversation. Between them rolled a cart carrying several sealed containers. Maya immediately straightened. Her eyes followed them. They moved directly toward the locked lower entrance. The same entrance. The same door nobody seemed to use. One of them typed something into the keypad. The door opened. The men disappeared inside. Then the door closed behind them. Questions gathered inside Maya's mind. Because suddenly the sounds beneath her apartment no longer felt random. They had a place. And places eventually lead somewhere. Over the next few days Maya stopped trying to ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Curiosity had started as a small thought, nothing more than a question sitting quietly in the back of her mind. But questions have a way of growing when answers never come. Every strange moment now connected itself to another strange moment. The scraping beneath the floor. The shadows. The whispers. The sealed containers entering the lower level. Separately they felt unusual. Together they felt impossible to dismiss. Maya began paying closer attention to the people around her. Not because she wanted to. Because she couldn't help it. Saturday morning, she stepped into the elevator carrying grocery bags while scrolling through her phone. Just before the doors closed, an elderly man from the 4th floor stepped inside. Maya had seen him many times before. Gray hair. Thick glasses. Always polite. Always carrying newspapers beneath his arm. The kind of neighbor who smiled at everyone. Morning, he said. Maya smiled back. For a few seconds, they stood quietly while the elevator descended. Then she said something without thinking. Have you ever wondered what's downstairs? The man looked up. What do you mean? The lower level, Maya said. Near the parking area. For a moment nothing happened. Then everything changed. The expression on his face disappeared completely. His eyes moved toward Maya. Not confused. Not curious. Something else. Something that looked closer to concern. He stared for a second too long. Then looked away. Oh, he said quietly. Just one word. Oh. The elevator reached the lobby. The door slid open. And before Maya could say anything else, he walked out. No goodbye. No smile. Nothing. Maya stood there holding her grocery bags while watching him disappear around the corner. People leave conversations for many reasons. Sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they forget something. Sometimes they simply don't want to talk. But there was something about his reaction that stayed with her. Because fear changes people in very small ways. You can hear it in hesitation. You can see it in silence. Later that evening, Maya noticed another strange moment. She walked through the hallway and passed a younger tenant she occasionally saw near the mailboxes. He usually nodded politely whenever they crossed paths. This time he looked directly at her, then quickly looked away. Maya frowned slightly. "Hey," she said. No response. He reached his apartment door, opened it quickly, walked inside, closed it behind him. That was it. No smile. No greeting. Nothing. Maya stood there staring at the closed door. A strange thought entered her mind. People can hide information in different ways. Some lie. Some avoid questions. Others say absolutely nothing. And sometimes silence reveals more than words ever could. Everybody knew something. Or at least that was how it felt. Because Maya was beginning to notice something unsettling. Every time she mentioned the lower level, people changed. Faces changed. Voices changed. Conversations ended. And suddenly Maya couldn't stop asking herself one question. If there was nothing unusual beneath the building, then why did everyone act like there was? Saturday arrived carrying a feeling Maya could no longer ignore. She had spent the previous nights trying to convince herself that everything happening around her had ordinary explanations waiting somewhere just outside her view. She tried focusing on work. She tried distracting herself with television, music, and long walks through the city. Yet every attempt failed because the same thought always found its way back into her mind. What was beneath her apartment? Questions had slowly turned into obsession. Obsession had slowly turned into something heavier. And now that feeling sat with her everywhere she went. By evening, Maya already knew sleep wasn't coming. Outside, the city lights stretched across wet streets while darkness slowly settled over the buildings surrounding her neighborhood. Apartment windows glowed across the distance like tiny islands floating in the night. Somewhere below, car engines moved through intersections while distant sirens faded in and out across the city. Inside Maya's apartment, silence felt louder than ever. She looked toward the clock. 10:42 p.m. Then toward the floor beneath her feet. Nothing. 11:18 p.m. Still nothing. 11:53 p.m. Maya sat on the edge of her couch, staring toward the front door. Waiting. Listening. Thinking. Then suddenly. Scrape. Maya closed her eyes. There it was again. Long. Slow. Metal dragging against concrete beneath her apartment. She lowered her head. Because at that moment something changed. Curiosity had carried her this far. But curiosity alone wasn't driving her anymore. She wanted answers. Needed answers. People always imagine decisions happening dramatically. They picture huge moments with music playing in the background and immediate certainty arriving all at once. Reality usually works differently. Sometimes life changes during quiet seconds. Sometimes decisions happen without realizing they happened at all. Maya stood up, walked toward her bedroom, reached inside a drawer, pulled out a flashlight, then grabbed her phone. She stared at both items sitting in her hands. For a moment she almost laughed, because part of her still knew this sounded ridiculous. Maybe she would walk downstairs and discover maintenance workers fixing pipes. Maybe storage rooms sat beneath the building. Maybe tomorrow morning she would laugh at herself for overthinking everything. Maybe. But another part of her remembered the shadows. The whispers. The sealed containers. The neighbor who suddenly stopped talking. The tenant who avoided eye contact. And the sounds beneath her floor. She slipped her phone into her pocket, took a slow breath, opened her apartment door. The hallway outside looked exactly the way it always had. Long, quiet, empty. Yet tonight it felt different. Tonight, every light seemed dimmer. Every shadow looked deeper. Every sound felt distant. Maya started walking, slowly, past closed apartment doors, past the elevator, past the mailboxes, toward the direction leading downstairs. Her footsteps echoed softly around her. Step, step, step. The closer she moved toward the basement hallway, the tighter her chest felt. Then she noticed something strange. The lower hallway lights were already on. Nobody stood there. Nobody moved. Yet the lights glowed quietly against the walls. Maya swallowed hard, because suddenly she realized something. She couldn't remember ever seeing those lights on before. Her hands trembled while moving closer. And somewhere deep inside, a voice quietly began asking her to turn around. Maya stopped several feet away from the lower entrance and stared at it in complete silence. Her heartbeat felt louder than the hallway around her. For days that door had existed as a question sitting in the back of her mind. Every strange sound, every whisper, every uncomfortable moment had somehow led back here. The heavy metal entrance stood beneath the weak hallway lights exactly the way it always had. Same faded paint. Same keypad beside the frame. Same cold appearance. But tonight something was different. Maya narrowed her eyes. The door wasn't fully closed. It sat slightly open. Only an inch. Maybe two. For a moment Maya thought she was imagining it. She stared harder. No. The narrow line of darkness between the frame and the door was real. Unexpected luck changed the situation. The entrance stood unlocked. A strange feeling moved through Maya immediately. Relief mixed with fear. Because for days she had wondered what waited below. She had imagined needing passwords, keys, security systems, or impossible ways inside. Now the answer stood directly in front of her. Open. Waiting. And somehow that felt worse. People spend their lives searching for answers. But sometimes the moment answers finally appear, instinct tells them to stop asking questions. Maya looked behind her. Empty hallway. No movement. No voices. Nothing. Her fingers tightened around the flashlight. Then slowly she stepped forward. The metal door moved with almost no effort at all. No loud creak. No heavy sound. Just a quiet movement revealing darkness beyond it. Cold air immediately brushed across her skin. Maya froze. Because the temperature changed instantly. The hallway behind her felt warm. Normal. But the air coming from below felt different. Colder. Still. Heavy. Almost like opening a door into a place untouched for years. She aimed her flashlight forward. Concrete stairs descended into darkness. Dust floated slowly through the weak beam of light. Maya swallowed. For a second, she considered turning around. For a second, she almost convinced herself to walk back upstairs and lock her apartment door and forget all of this had happened. But then she remembered the scraping sounds beneath her floor, the shadows beneath her door, the whispers, the sealed containers. Questions had brought her here, and questions were still waiting. Maya placed one foot onto the first step, then another. Cold air rose upward around her. Dust drifted quietly through the light. Every step created echoes. Step, step, step. The sounds bounced against walls somewhere below and returned to her again. Step, step, step. The staircase seemed longer than it should have been. Long enough for her mind to begin creating possibilities. Storage rooms, maintenance equipment, old building systems. Anything. Anything except the feeling growing in her chest. Because with each step Maya felt something becoming harder to ignore. She no longer felt like she was entering an abandoned lower level. She felt like she was entering somewhere people still used. Then halfway down the staircase, she suddenly stopped moving. Because from somewhere below, she heard movement. Very faint. Very slow. A metallic scraping sound. Again. Maya stopped breathing. The sound came again. Scrape. Slow. Metal against concrete. The exact same sound she had heard beneath her apartment for days. Only now there was no floor separating her from it. Now there were only a few steps. Every muscle in her body tightened. The flashlight in her hand suddenly felt heavier as she stood frozen in place. Her mind immediately searched for reasons to leave. Turn around. Go upstairs. Call somebody. Walk away. Any one of those choices made sense. Yet she stayed. Because there was something about finally standing this close to an answer. Something powerful. Something difficult to walk away from. The sound stopped. Silence followed. Maya waited. Nothing. Slowly she continued downward. Step. 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 At the bottom of the staircase, the narrow passage opened into a larger space. The beam from her flashlight moved carefully across concrete walls and old shelves covered with dust. Pipes stretched overhead, disappearing into darkness while small shadows shifted across corners as the light moved. The room felt larger than she expected. Much larger. And immediately Maya realized something. This wasn't a storage area. Storage rooms look forgotten. Storage rooms collect junk. Storage rooms sit untouched. This place didn't feel forgotten. Someone had been here. Recently. Shelves lined sections of the walls, but they weren't filled with boxes or maintenance equipment. Papers. Folders. Stacks of notes. Small objects. Maya moved forward carefully. Questions raced through her mind. Who used this place? Why keep it hidden? Why beneath an apartment building? Her flashlight shifted across another wall. Then she froze. Completely. At first her brain struggled to understand what she was seeing. Photographs. Dozens of them. No. Hundreds. Faces covered entire walls. Men. Women. Young people. Older people. Everywhere she looked there were pictures staring back at her. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Slowly she stepped closer. Under each photograph sat small handwritten labels. Names. Dates. Addresses. Notes. Tiny details written beneath faces. Her eyes moved from one picture to another. Then another. Then another. She whispered quietly to herself. What is this? The room suddenly felt colder. Much colder. Maya raised the flashlight higher. Faces surrounded her from every direction now. Pinned beside photographs were pages filled with schedules and observations. Morning routines. Work locations. Times. Places. Movements. Confusion spread through her mind immediately. Then confusion changed into something else. Fear. Real fear. Because Maya began recognizing people. The woman from apartment 308. The man with newspapers from the elevator. The younger tenant who avoided eye contact. Neighbors. Residents. People living upstairs. Maya's breathing became uneven. Her eyes moved faster now. Photograph after photograph after photograph. Then suddenly, she stopped. Everything stopped. Her body. Her thoughts. Her breathing. Because there on the wall, staring back at her beneath the beam of light, was her face. One photograph belonged to Maya, and beneath it someone had written, Apartment 102. Then below that, usually arrives home, 6:15 p.m. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Because this wasn't a room where somebody watched strangers. This was a room where somebody watched everyone. Maya couldn't move. Her flashlight remained fixed on the photograph, while her mind struggled to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. For several seconds, she simply stared. Apartment 102. Usually arrives home, 6:15 p.m. The words sat beneath her picture like ordinary notes written on ordinary paper. But there was nothing ordinary about any of this anymore. Slowly, Maya stepped closer. Her hands trembled. Her breathing felt shallow. Because once the first shock passed, she started noticing details she hadn't seen immediately. More writing surrounded her photograph. Monday, coffee before work. Tuesday, grocery store after 7 p.m. Friday, returns later than usual. Several dates sat beside short observations. Small details. Personal details. The kind of things strangers should never know. Maya felt a cold wave move through her chest. Then her eyes shifted toward the other photographs. And suddenly she noticed something she had missed before. This wasn't random. Every face had notes. Every single one. Additional details surrounded each person. Daily routines. Favorite places. Work schedules. Times. Habits. Patterns. Apartment numbers. Some pages included small maps. Others had handwritten observations connected by arrows and dates. Maya moved her flashlight across the walls and realized the room stretched farther than she first thought. Shelves disappeared into darker sections beyond her view. More papers covered distant walls. More faces stared back at her. Her eyes stopped on the elderly neighbor from the elevator. Morning walks, 7:30 a.m. Collects newspaper downstairs. Visits pharmacy every Wednesday. Then the younger tenant who avoided eye contact. Gym schedule, Monday, Thursday. Usually alone. Returns after 9 p.m. Maya's heart pounded harder. Because these weren't names on a list. These were lives. Real people. People sleeping only floors above this room. People walking hallways believing they were safe. People who had no idea someone had been watching them. Then Maya remembered something. The elderly neighbor. His expression inside the elevator. The way he suddenly walked away. The younger tenant avoiding eye contact. The silence. The strange reactions. Everybody knew something. Or maybe everybody suspected something. Maybe they had noticed pieces of it without understanding the whole picture. Maybe they ignored instincts because reality felt harder to accept. Maya slowly looked around again. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air suddenly felt heavier. Then another thought entered her mind. A terrible thought. She wasn't observing somebody else's secret. A long silence settled around her. Then the truth reached her all at once. Somebody had been observing everyone. And at that exact moment Maya noticed something beneath her own photograph. A small note. One she hadn't read yet. Written in darker ink than the others. Her flashlight moved lower. Then her eyes widened. Because beside today's date were 4 words. Started asking questions recently. Maya stared at the note beneath her photograph and felt her heartbeat pounding against her chest. Started asking questions recently. She read it again. Then again. Her breathing became uneven. Because those words changed everything. Watching people was disturbing enough. Recording routines was terrifying enough. But this was different. This meant whoever created this room wasn't collecting old information. The notes were current. Recent. Updated. Someone wasn't tracking the building months ago. Someone was tracking it now. Someone had seen her. Someone knew she had become curious. Someone knew she had started paying attention. Maya slowly stepped backward. Then another step. The room suddenly felt different. A few seconds earlier she had believed she was standing inside a hidden place left unattended for the night. Now that idea disappeared completely. This wasn't abandoned. This wasn't forgotten. This was active. Very active. Her flashlight moved shakily across the walls once more. Faces stared back at her from every direction. Hundreds of eyes frozen inside photographs seemed to follow her movements as she backed away. Every note suddenly felt more disturbing than before. Collects mail at 5:40 p.m. Returns from work at 6:15 p.m. Walks dog at 8 p.m. Visits coffee shop every Saturday. Maya felt a cold sensation spread through her arms. Because somebody had spent an unbelievable amount of time building this. Hours. Days. Maybe years. Then, a sharp clicking sound echoed somewhere in the darkness. Maya froze. Click. For 1 second nothing happened. Then a soft electrical hum filled the room. Maya slowly turned her head. Across the room, sitting near shelves she hadn't noticed before, a single monitor suddenly powered on. The light exploded through the darkness. Maya's eyes widened immediately. The screen flickered once. Then twice. Static flashed briefly. Her feet refused to move. The room felt completely silent now. No scraping sounds. No distant movement. Nothing. Then the image on the screen cleared. Maya stared. Her entire body locked in place. Because she was looking at herself. For one confused second her brain searched for explanations. Maybe someone had recorded her earlier. Maybe security cameras existed somewhere around the building. Maybe. Then Maya noticed something. Her flashlight. The one in her hand. On the screen it moved exactly when she moved it. Maya slowly raised her arm. On the monitor, her arm lifted at the same moment. Slowly she turned her head. The image turned too. Her mouth opened slightly. Not a recording. Maya felt her stomach drop. Live footage. Her eyes widened in complete horror. Because somewhere, very close, someone was watching her right now. And then, near the lower corner of the screen, a tiny red light blinked. Connected. Maya couldn't breathe. Connected. The tiny red light continued blinking at the corner of the screen while she stared in complete disbelief. Her flashlight trembled in her hand now. Every thought inside her mind collided at once. Every explanation she had been holding onto over the past several days suddenly collapsed. The camera wasn't showing old footage. It was showing her, standing there, inside that room. At that exact moment, Maya slowly looked around. Her eyes searched every corner of the underground space. Shelves, pipes, walls covered with photographs, dust moving through flashlight beams. She searched for cameras, for blinking lights, for anything watching her from the darkness. But she couldn't see anything. That somehow felt worse. Because if she couldn't find the camera, Then whoever placed it had hidden it well. Very well. The monitor flickered. Once. Twice. Static briefly moved across the screen before the image returned. Maya stared at herself again. Then she noticed something that made her blood turn cold. On the screen, behind her, something moved. Very slightly. Maya froze. Her heart stopped for a moment. Slowly, almost mechanically, her eyes moved away from the monitor. Slowly she turned her head. Nothing. Only darkness. Only shelves. Only walls. Maya looked back toward the screen. The movement had disappeared. No, not disappeared. Changed. Because now she noticed something else. Someone had been standing just outside the camera frame. Someone close enough to almost appear on screen. Someone close enough to move. Maya took a step backward. Then another. Then, footsteps. A sound emerged somewhere behind her. Slow. Measured. One step. Then another. Maya felt every muscle in her body lock instantly. She didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. Because somewhere deep inside, instinct was screaming at her not to. The footsteps continued. Closer. Step. 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 Maya stared at the monitor in complete shock. Then suddenly the speakers somewhere inside the room crackled softly. Static filled the silence. Her eyes widened. Then a calm voice spoke through the darkness. You finally found us. Maya stopped breathing. Because the voice didn't sound surprised. It didn't sound angry. It sounded like somebody had been waiting. Waiting for her. For a very long time. Then everything went black. What would you do next? Comment your answer below and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next story.